Housekeeping items. This session is being recorded and we'll be sharing later. Everyone will remain muted during the presentation, but we do encourage you to use the Q&A chat feature on the bottom. I'm sorry, that's two different things. There's a Q&A and a chat feature. So please feel free to use that. Jessica Lawson is also with us today, and she's the co-host, and she'll be managing that chat and the Q&A for all of our participants. And if there's any point in time that you guys have any questions, you can also use the raise hand feature as well. So just before we get started, a little bit about Peace River Center. Thank you all so much for joining us. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. As you'll see behind me, a green screen about Make It Okay. Our theme for this Mental Health Awareness Month this year is to make it okay. Make It Okay is a campaign to reduce the stigma surrounding mental illness by learning, talking, and sharing about mental illness. So there'll be some more information and an email to follow up about our Make It Okay campaign. And following also with some additional dates of things that you can do, activities such as Wear Green Day tomorrow, and other webinars that you can participate during the month. And so just to tell you again a little bit about Peace River Center, we are the community's behavioral health, mental health organization, and we provide an array of services throughout our community, Polk, Highlands, and Hardy. As you'll see, we do have 25 different locations in our service area, and we provide evidence-based practices and throughout our programs and services. We have a crisis stabilization unit in Lakeland and a crisis stabilization unit in Bartow. And those crisis stabilization units serve as an emergency psychiatric service, care 24 hours a day to anyone in our community who needs immediate care. As you can see, we serve over 22,000 individuals on any given year. That's children, adolescents, adults, and seniors. Again, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, so these webinars and sessions are used to help create understanding surrounding mental illness, create understanding around the services that are available in your community, and also talking about recovery, because recovery is possible for individuals who are living with a mental illness as well as recovery of substance use. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to introduce to you today our speakers. And thank you so much, Jim and Valerie, for joining us today and taking the time to share your story. So Jim and Valerie Clanton are lifelong Lakelanders and have been married for over 30 years. They are here today to share their recovery experience, strength, and hope with you today. Jim has worked in social services in Polk, Highlands, and Hardy counties for over 25 years, primarily working with individuals and families involved with the criminal justice system who also have substance use and behavioral health disorders. Jim currently works with the Polk County Problem Solving Court. He is a certified recovery peer specialist who has a passion to see others find freedom from addiction and establish a life of meaning and purpose. Jim has graduated from Southeastern University in 1993 and is currently a student at FSU pursuing his master's in social work. Valerie has worked in the helping field with the Polk County school system, nursing homes, and more recently as a licensed practical nurse at Mary Lyons Detox. They love spending their time with their adult daughter, Anna, listening to local live music, going to the beach, spending time in nature, and loving on their dogs, Jack, Ollie, and cats, Toonsies and Tubby. Did I get that right? You guys are on mute, so if you want to go ahead and unmute there.
Toonses.
Toonses and Tubby.
Yeah. Toonses was a character on Saturday Night Live back in the 80s. He could drive a car. Yeah. So.
Fantastic. Well, again, thank you all for being here. We're just kind of dive in. This is really a conversation about your experience, and we're going to have some Q&A at the end. So I'm just going to go ahead and ask that you tell us a little bit about your personal history.
Sure. And we're going to kind of each share. So at times, you're seeing pictures of our family there that we've sent in. That's our son Michael with my wife and Anna. Michael and Anna there together. We're at the aquarium. As you can see, Michael's passion was skating. He was always jumping off of something, trying to master a trick. There's a shot of Val and Anna and Michael when they were little at Peterson Park. So we were a very active, happy family growing up. Certainly not a perfect family, but very much involved in the community. Um, to back up a little bit, my wife and I actually met in a recovery setting, Palmview Hospital, back in 1988, 89. And we, Val was 18, I was 20, 21, and our lives had kind of spun out of control. And one of the rules I and other people always say is there are no rehab romances. You're not to do that. So while there might have been some appreciation of each other, we didn't get involved in a relationship really until about a year later. We became very close friends. And we're really within a couple of years, by the summer of 1990, we got married. And that was on the heels of my actually losing my mom in a car accident, which was horrific on Dixieland Avenue. My mom, or the post office at Dixieland, my mom was a third grade school teacher at Cleveland Court for about 30 years. And so, I think a lot of people that struggle with substance misuse, early on, they can trace back their drug and alcohol use as an attempt to try to self-medicate and feel okay. And then the compulsion comes in and it doesn't work anymore. And that was certainly true for me. I began drinking and drugging when I was about 14 or 15. And by the time I was in my early 20s, I had 2 or 3 arrests related to alcohol and been to rehab a couple of times. And I really believe when I came out, I was very fortunate. Not many people get it their first time through a rehab, but we were fortunate enough to have some friends that were very grounded spiritually and healthy emotionally and stuck with us. And we just spent all our times with these friends. I got very involved in a church, enrolled in Southeastern. And when my mom did pass in that accident, we were fairly grounded, and my wife and I were very much in love. And within a few months we got married. And it's just throughout this talk, basically it's been the grace of our higher power, who I call God, that has kept us together through a lot. So to fast forward a little bit, our first son was born in 1993. Michael, he was our only son, our firstborn. He was a surprise. I will never forget the phone call from Val telling me she was pregnant. And I was at school at Southeastern. I was working part-time. She was working at Oscar Pope with profoundly mentally and physically handicapped kids. And we really had no debt to speak of, but we were just kind of living in the bliss of an early marriage and love. And Michael was the next thing. Just we were shocked, but we were happy. And within a few years, Anna was born. So I don't know if Val wants to pick up and share a little bit about the early part of mothering and taking care of Michael and Anna. She can, or
no. Hi, I'm Valerie. So I was pretty young when we got married, and then a couple years later we had Michael in 93, and then our daughter Anna was born in 97. And I was, having been in rehab at the age of 18, I was still learning how to be, an adult and recovering and healing. And it's a lot when you're married and then you have a kid and then you have another kid, and it's a lot. And but I was very thankful that I was able to be with them so much. And I always did jobs where I either worked after the, when Jim was at home, or I watched kids in the house, or did things to where I didn't have to put them in daycare. Not that that's a big deal, but it was, that's expensive too. Anyway, so I love being able to do stuff with them, and I take them to the park all the time, and used to take them to Kelly Rec to go swimming, and my kids are just very, very precious to me, and I have lots of good memories of them jumping on the trampoline in the backyard with the hose and the neighborhood kids being over. And things were good. As the kids started to get a little bit older, Michael started to have some issues. They start hanging around kids and neighborhood kids and things like that. And he started hanging around a neighborhood kid that, they're likely to get into stuff wherever they are. But anyway, things started to be a little more difficult when Michael reached middle school. He started smoking pot some, and just some attitude changes, and school got harder, and he's wanting to be more himself and wanted to grow his hair out. He's going to Lawton Childs, where everybody has, real strict, clothing, code and hair and everything. So, a lot of that's normal. And he started discovering how much he loves skating. There's a picture of him on the computer. His friends used to call him apparently they used to call him the rail master because he got really good at skateboarding. But he started in middle school, and I remember him and his friend made their first video. His neighborhood friend Brandon, and they were all excited. It was a big deal, and they could barely jump off a curb or do anything. And but it was always a lot of fun watching them and seeing them. And she had a couple of neighbor friends, and so there are always kids outside. And
Yeah, our house was the neighborhood kind of hangout, and I can remember coming home from work and sometimes being thrilled and sometimes being upset, because it was kind of like Johnny Knoxville. As he got older, he definitely, started just thrill seeking, and sometimes it would be jumping off the roof, or, let's get the trampoline with water and dish detergent, and let's get a swing, and let's jump off the roof. And so everything was always, taking it to the next level. And as a kid, as a man, I think back when I was a kid and I could relate. But as a dad, I'm thinking, somebody's going to get hurt. I mean, it's like, it was a miracle no one got really hurt in our backyard. So.
But I always enjoyed having the kids over. Like, I always loved having the kids over and doing stuff with them and taking them places, and we go to the springs and everything. And it was nice because Anna had a couple of friends that lived right here in the neighborhood. And so I have a lot of happy memories from when the kids were younger. But things did get harder. Like I said, Michael started having some issues and struggling in middle school, and then he started acting out more. And
I'm sorry to interrupt. Middle school, probably 14.
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
14.
yeah. 6th, 7th, 8th grade is like, I think, when things more started. And it's hard to know as a parent when what's going on, what's normal, what's not normal. How do you it's hard it's hard as a parent to gauge through all that. And so, but it turns out, he had started smoking pot, started messing with Xanax started drinking a little bit. It still didn't really affect his school. He was in advanced classes in middle school. By the time, and he loved skateboarding. He spent all his time doing that. And then by the time he got to high school, things definitely had picked up. The picture of him in the corner his girlfriend was with him all the time. She was a very sweet girl. And he was, for the most part, he was happy. He was really good at skateboarding. He had all his friends. He was doing okay in school. He had his girlfriend. He was busy all the time. But with us, there was issues of, attitude and knowing that he's doing some things he shouldn't be doing. And, the police chasing after him because he's skating somewhere on Florida Southern's property that he shouldn't be. They vandalized a facility one time on the outside. They got sent to juvie, had to get him out of there. So things just kind of slowly escalated. And Anna, who was always, she kind of took the other role of very, very mellow, very compliant, always did well, never caused a ruckus, caused a scene, very easygoing. But on her, it was a lot of strain because she's having to deal with the increasing stress of the turmoil that sorry, these pictures are hard to see.
Yeah, the house, if you could picture, I think there's a house, Ripley's, the upside down house. Our house, and a friend of mine who I look up to a lot, he was one of the first people to say, that your house gets turned upside down when one member begins to use drugs and alcohol. And the sad fact is I had relapsed in my early 30s after a heart attack. And so I was hiding drinking. So my wife and my daughter had no idea. My wife eventually found out, and Michael, kind of like me, could tell something was going on. So there was a lot of just anxiety, chaos, confusion. It was like a roller coaster ride. I would pretty much reserve my drinking to the weekends, and I was what I guess people would call functional in many ways, which meant I went to work. So all of that was happening in the house, and
So this was happening on at the same time that you saw those changes with Michael.
Correct. Yeah, Michael was, and I think most of the pressure and the burden and the anxiety was on my wife. I had a lot of guilt and a lot of shame, but there was a lot of promises that never would get fulfilled. I got to where I would get up in the daytime and I would just know that I am not going to drink. And then I would get through work and I would. And that's that compulsion. And, I attribute it to me. I had 12, 13 years of no substance use whatsoever. But there was the pressure at home, there was bills, there was financial issues. I had a major heart attack, and life just it was like a perfect storm. And that happens in a lot of people's lives. So I did not have what I call a program of recovery at that time. I was giving out and working, trying to help other people. So long story short is I became very much part of the problem with Michael. And I was not fit really to be stable and correct him and discipline him. It was more anger, more demands. And, so that went on really throughout high school and kind of hit a wall. We hit a wall his senior year.
Would you say that, so you had mentioned though that you noticed some things going on in middle school when he was starting to experiment with some stuff. Was that really the onset of it all, or was high school really where you started to see?
It was with him, it was just a very gradual progression. And at first it was more just like attitude of, not wanting to comply or, talking back or having an attitude about things. And it just slowly progressed. And then by the time he was in high school, nothing major had happened in middle school yet. But just some of those attitudes had started percolating, and,
Yeah, his senior year. I mean, what I had overheard him talking about getting high, and you got to remember, this was early 2000s, mid 2000s, 2006, 7, 8, 9. So that was the first generation, I think, where kids were getting cell phones. So he had his own cell phone, and in the beginning, it was really, we didn't think that much out of it, but I would notice him going way out of his way to leave, not just the room, but many times go outside of the house and talk.
Yeah.
And one time I overheard him, I think, probably in the 9th grade or 10th grade, talking about getting high. And not long after that, he got arrested they were skating on DeVita's property, doing some skate tricks. And I worked at the courthouse and was able to bring in a sample of Michael's urine, and there was a lot of THC in it for a kid his size. And we tried to monitor it a little bit and do some, grounding, and we found a counselor or two that tried to work with him. But in my mind, what happened in his senior year, it had progressed and he was doing more drinking. His girlfriend broke up with him, and he got pretty much kicked out of Lakeland High School and had to go to Travis, which he didn't really want to do, but he did. And he started to hang out, I think, with other kids that were doing other things, and he began to dabble more in like hallucinogens and DMT and different medications. And we noticed that there was anxiety that was coming. It was really, in my mind, that's when the mental health issues really started happening. He became almost phobic about smells and fear and paranoia. And he would go through periods where he would vacillate between what's called straight edge, where he would be completely sober and just skate, and at times would hang out with me or with Val, and but it wouldn't really last that long. And the mental health stuff sometimes would get worse during that period where he wasn't able to self-medicate. So again, we would take, we would try to figure out local counselors. I think that we tried a couple, and Michael really, 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 really had a hard time in those scenarios. And I think, a lot of it is going in there, you feel like everything is about me. And I think he felt that way. And we just never did find success with a counselor. He got onto some medications, but they really weren't the right ones. And he abused those medications as well. So he had the two things. He had what's called co-occurring mental health substance abuse issues. And to have that as a teen is tough. I mean, it's tough enough just being a teenager, going through everything teenagers go through, but then to add all of that onto it was really hard. So we never really got, I don't think, an accurate mental health diagnosis. I mean, I look at him and there was phases where I feel like maybe he was bipolar, there was social and like generalized anxiety and stuff, but Val might have some ideas on that.
It was hard to know what was going on with them. I would try to talk to him because, he went from being this pretty, average, kind of shy. It was really the only thing I saw. And sometimes he would procrastinate in school when he was in elementary school and things like that, but nothing major. But it was like, as the drugs progressed, as the drinking progressed, it got to be that you started to see the emotional, the mental health. He, and as a parent, I have one regret of wishing that I had been much more proactive and hardcore as to going after it. And I know hindsight's 20/20. But it was just, it got to the point where, like, what was the drugs? What was a mental and emotional? He tried DMT a couple of times. I actually drove him to the kid's house. I didn't know that was even going on. He turned into a completely different kid, became very paranoid, OCD, very, very much not my kid. His behavior completely changed. And those side effects didn't subside for several years. And it just progressed. And then at the end of high school, his girlfriend broke up with him. He was out of school. And it was kind of like, and then that's when it really kicked in of him isolating more. He didn't go skateboard with his friends as much. He would ride off on his bike and stay gone, wouldn't know where he went. I was always chasing him around, trying to find where he was. I was having a hard time because Jim was basically off to, struggling with his stuff. And I felt very overwhelmed as a parent. And I wasn't taking care of myself. And so emotionally, mentally, I started getting very drained. And, and I'm being codependent, and I'm being, I'm enabling at times. And I wasn't reaching out to getting the help that I needed to help deal with all this stuff. I'm just trying to hold it all together. And I wish I had done that. I wish I had gotten more, really stayed with counseling and really, I don't know. Like I said, hindsight's 20/20. But so then at one point, Michael was passed out in the parking garage downtown. I didn't know where he was for 2 days until his friend actually called me. And Michael had a 0.4 alcohol level. He should have been dead. He's a little skinny kid. His friends left him there. I find out that he'd been passed out in somebody's front yard. And it just progressed. And so, the fun and the skating and all that slowly started to decline. And the drinking and the drugs and the excess just continued to increase. And he just began isolating that much more. So what happened, and here Anna is, super well in school, 1,000 volunteer hours, super responsible. She's never one to, cause a wave. And so she got neglected, not purposely, but because, she's the quiet one. She's the one doing what she's supposed to. So you're not worried about her. You're not stressed about her, but she ends up getting, so anyway, and it just kept progressing. And so Michael ended up, got really messed up, got into a bunch of black tar paint while he was skateboarding one night, passed out. We had to send him to the hospital.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'll take it from there. So, yeah, Anna absorbed a lot quietly, and I think now she's listening in. She's not with us, but our relationship is healing up over the last 4 years. But that's the part of it's called a family dis-ease or disease, where every person in the family is affected. And for me, I finally came to the end of myself in around 2010, 2011, and found a 12-step community that helped me get sober. And to this day, I owe that fellowship and the men and women in that fellowship my life, because they walked with me through all of my stuff and loved me. And I was able to find the healing I needed to, and to get relationships and support. And so where Val had left off is I got up one morning, and we had gotten used to Michael being gone sometimes for several days. And, he's like 22 at this point, not working. And something told me to go inside his room, and I went in there, and he was completely passed out, pretty much non-responsive. He had paint all over his body. And I remember looking back, who would do this? But you're so used to kind of insane situations. I actually put my hand up there, and I could tell he was breathing. So I walked out, and I got Anna, and I took her to Harrison real quick, and I came back, and then I called 911. And he was Baker acted. And I think that crisis, because he had been in crisis before, where there was an arrest and we didn't bail him out. It was a misdemeanor. He could have just been in and out, but we really worked with the court system to find a rehab. They put him in a rehab down south that was a faith-based rehab, I think, that has worked with some people and is probably a good program, but it did not work for Michael. he had run from that and he had
Just
violated
mental health.
his probation. There was no real mental health component of that. So there'd been some crises, and there'd been some chances for treatment, and whether it was outpatient or inpatient, but this was it. This was something different. It had gotten to a point, I think, where I was healthy enough and sober enough and in my right mind to stand firm. And Val and I were seeing it the same way. We weren't opposed or angry. We just wanted Michael to get help. So we just told him he couldn't come home until he found a treatment center, and we always kept him on our insurance. So he worked with a social worker, and they found him a good inpatient program in Ocala. He went. I believe he got some pretty good treatment there. We would go visit him on family days. We told him, you're not going to be able to come home. We want you to continue to step down into a lower level of care, like a level 3, a halfway house or sober living program. He did that. We actually looked at a few, and he chose probably the most strict program that had the best reputation, that had the most qualified staff. And he just couldn't cut it there. They, in those environments, they give you a little bit of freedom, and he kept drinking. They gave him 2 or 3 chances. And the last time he drank, they said, we're going to kick him out. What do you want us to do? And I had made a decision, well, he can't come home. Let's do a wellness check. And he ended up in a detox center up there. And again, he was wanting to come home. And this is the hard part. What do you do? Everything in you on one level kind of wants to just pretend or go back to a place where you can never really go back to, and just hug your son and bring him home and think, but the history shows every time you do that, it doesn't work. So we opted out of that, and we found another sober living program in Fort Lauderdale. And there in Fort Lauderdale, we saw what appeared to be some improvement with him. He got a job. He seemed to be making some progress. And our relationship, which was almost non-existent, was beginning to grow. We had a huge affinity. We both loved Bob Dylan. And I remember the night Bob Dylan won the Nobel Peace Prize, we actually texted back and forth. We started sending each other YouTube clips. He would send us pictures of him working, which is a big deal. He had a job like as a graphic kind of computer artist, laminating stuff for the Miami Dolphins athletic, like their training ground. And we decided that we were going to go down and see him in December around Christmas. We were going to take off of work, and we were going to really be open to what was next, and hoping that he could move closer here. And we had penciled that in. And one day, that changed our life forever. It was a Friday, December the 15th, December 16th. I'm sorry. We got a call. I was at work. My wife was outside, and it was a homicide detective from Broward County calling to let us know that they had found him in this sober living program. And that just, time just stops, everything just comes to a shuddering halt. And people started showing up at our house, and we had to deal with the reality. And Val may want to share some.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's hard to put it all in a nutshell. But yeah, he had gone there. He started doing a little bit better. He had a guy that was actually training him how to do graphics. And for the first time, he was like proud of himself. I knew he was still kind of struggling. He was in a halfway house where they didn't really do classes or expect a whole lot, but you did have a curfew. You did have to go to an AA group like once a day or a couple times a week. They would very randomly, not like I perceived that they did it more often than they actually did, as far as drug screens. And so I was really proud of him, because for the first time, like, he'd send me little clips of what he was learning, and they were giving him a lot more independence, and he was proud of himself. And he'd have to ride his bike like almost an hour to get there. And I was really proud of him.
And then he had a binge in November of 2016, and he told me that he had used cocaine and some other things, and he got really sick. I told him to go to the ER, and they really didn't do a whole lot. And then December 16th, I get a phone call from the detective that basically they found Michael dead. He had overdosed on his bed. And he wasn't trying to. He would dabble with stuff and thought he could just keep dabbling with it. And he got a hold of some stuff that took him out. And so that was 2016. So since then, I can honestly, everything I've been through in my life has never been as hard as that. And
I thank you so much for sharing all of that. I know it's hard to talk about that. And you kind of mentioned, hindsight's 2020. And now when you think about all the research that's been done and the statistics that you read about co-occurring disorders, and sometimes mental health issues start to arise at the age of 14, kind of at that age where you said, he was starting to experiment. When you think back at that time, what can you tell us about the lessons that you learned through that process, really just now in your work as well, and how maybe you help others?
I can say that looking back, and what I would encourage other people is take it by the horns and do everything and anything that you can, whether it's Peace River, Marchman enact them constantly. I work at a detox now, and I see some parents, they Marchman enact their kids the second something happens, and they've been there 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times, but you know what? They're still alive. And, and I don't blame myself. Michael made choices, but I do wish, and I would encourage other people to take those steps to do for themselves what they need to do to get the tools that they can as a parent to reach out to counselors. Peace River. I went to Peace River when I got out of rehab, and it was very helpful. I went to counseling there, and I was very appreciative of that. But I just would really, really encourage to parents or family to do whatever you have to do to not enable, to set those boundaries, to reach out for yourself, to do and get the help that you need to cope with all of it going on, because it's stressful. It's stressful. It's frustrating. You feel like you're all alone. I got to the point where I just I would just throw my hands up and just felt like just giving up because I didn't know what to do. And
yeah, I agree with all of that. I think one thing too is working as hard as you can to take care of yourself, and finding people in your life that are peaceful and positive and supportive, because it does feel like you're drowning, and in many ways you are. The more you focus on your son or your daughter's issues, the more overwhelmed you get. And a lot of times we're afraid to reach out to other people. We think parents and families have it all together, and so we don't do that. So the blessing that I see is there are spiritual communities, there are NA groups, AA groups, Al-Anon, ACOA. There's a group in Plant City that's just formed called, let me get it here.
And what we can do too, also, we'll share this information out after the meeting in an email. So
okay.
We can share all of those resources for parents and the youth to access the help.
Yeah. But I guess what I'm getting at is when you're going through it, if you're going through it alone, or if you're at odds with your partner or your husband or your wife, it gets that triangular thing, and the person that's really using kind of manipulates and twists that. And so you have to get beyond that and get in a place of agreement, and then get support. You need counseling. You need people that are going to help you kind of take care of yourself. And all of it, you have to kind of do it in love. Well, you don't kind of, you have to do it in love, even though it's tough love. If it's just all anger and yelling and screaming, nothing gets accomplished. So.
And I did want, I was going to say, as far as now, after all the aftermath of everything, I am very thankful that I see a grief counselor, and it's been 4 years and I still see her. And working at Detox, it's amazing the trauma that people go through. And it helps me being able to work there. I appreciate it very much. I love the people that I work with, but it amazes me the trauma and the things that people go through that they don't even think about going to grief counseling. They're just so used to having to deal with all this stuff that it just, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you need trauma counseling. You need grief counseling. You need therapy. You might need to go talk to the doctor and see whatever kind of help you can get. And I'm just thankful now that I'm really doing things to work to help myself heal, and going to counseling. I go to a psychiatrist. I see a grief counselor. I don't try to hide it anymore. I talk and I share. I'm very proud of my daughter, Anna. She's been through a lot. She'd been in college when all that was going on. It was traumatic. She came back home. And I'm so proud of her for, I just love her so much. And she's just such an amazing person. And I'm very thankful that through this horrible, horrible tragedy that Jim has learned to be healthy himself. And I'm extremely thankful for the help that he reaches out to get. And for him, it's 12 steps, and the friendships that he's gained is just phenomenal. And the support that I've gained through the different groups. And it makes a huge difference.
So just to kind of overview a little bit too, we've talked about your experience and what you would maybe say someone do who's going through this now. And I think what I've taken from what you said, Jim, also is have a good support system, access care. If you see that there are issues, access some sort of care and push through to continue to fight for them to get the care that they need. Is there anything else that you'd like to add to that going through this experience you would say to someone that's going through this now?
I think as hard as it is to hear it, what we've found out is that addiction is progressive, and in many cases it's fatal. And we don't get to choose who it's fatal to, who's going to be a victim of that. You don't know. And the drugs that are out there right now on the streets are cut with so much different stuff. And our son really was not into methamphetamines. He was not into heroin. He never really did any really hard drugs here in Lakeland. He got down there and he got in way over his head and was just wide open to experiencing things. So I think you have to do this as a parent. You have to be able to look yourself in the mirror and say, if the worst case scenario happens here, can I live with myself? Can I be okay? Because you're gonna have some regret, and you're gonna go through, and you're gonna feel some pain and wonder maybe you should have done this or that. But if you know ultimately that you loved your child and you tried to get him help and you were there for him all the way through, then it's a lot easier. I mean, that sounds awful, but that's the worst case scenario. The better case scenario is, I think the statistics are, it takes about 5, 6, or 7 episodes of care, and many people do get it. It just takes that much time for someone to kind of reach a place of understanding and brokenness to find what works for them. And so, I mean, it's just it's an awful thing to have to go through, but you have to go through it. You know, we
Yeah,
lost 90,000 people last year to overdose. The year before, 70,000. So do the math, parents, kids, uncles, cousins, friends, I mean, employers, you know, it's an epidemic.
yeah, and they say studies show or statistics show that people, whether it's a mental health disorder or something, take approximately 10 years to access the care that they need. You know, and I think, thank you again so much for sharing, because you talking about it, you both are in recovery, but you've experienced great loss because of, you know, a co-occurring disorder in mental health issues with your son. I think that you could, you know, talk about that. So you guys, you know, have experienced the recovery because you walked in it. You knew that that's what you had to do to get to the other side, but you've experienced that loss of someone who couldn't get through that recovery, and maybe couldn't access the care, and whatever we can do to make it okay for others to really open up and access the care. What I know you, Valerie, talked about Anna, and as a mom, I know you're so proud of her for getting through all of that. What else can you guys tell me about what you're most proud about right now in your life?
Well, I have a good friend who I love dearly, who her son's had brain cancer for almost a decade, and we joke sometimes. We're like, "You got out of bed today. Good job, Val." And my grief counselor even say, like, "You took a shower today. Good job."
Yes, yes.
And sometimes I think we are so hard on ourselves, and there are a few things like that I've learned that, you know, learning to forgive myself, it's really hard. Learning to forgive myself, realizing that so many things that I used to get stressed out about or worried about or frustrated about, that I've really come to realize when you've had the worst possible thing happen to you, is that so many things just don't matter. We spend so much time and energy on getting upset and stressed about all these things that in the end, they don't matter. Your relationships matter, your family matters, your kids matter. And you've got to do whatever you can to strengthen those and hold on to those and to grow those and to value those, and not let all the other stuff cloud that and steal from you. And I will say the fact, and like I said, it sounds very basic, you know, get up, but the fact of getting up, the fact of not giving up, not giving up, and to never lose hope. I know it sounds cliche, but and to really reach out to those people and to not shy away from that. And I am proud of the fact that I work at Detox. It seems pretty crazy. About 8 months after, you know, little less than a year after we lost Michael, I ended up working there, and it's literally like God just dropped it in my lap, like, "Here, Val." You know, she called me out of the blue after months of me not responding and said, "Are you still want the job?" And I finally was like, "I'd be really stupid to not take this." It's just been handed to me. And I will say it's what's the word I'm looking for? Reaching out and doing things for other people, it doesn't fix it, but it kind of helps, like when you put salve on a wound, and it helps bring some healing and some comfort. That reaching out and helping others has really, it helps soothe those wounds and those hurts.
Absolutely.
Liana, we have a few comments. So the first we had in the chat that just said, "Thank you, Jim and Valerie, for sharing your story." And then in our Q&A, someone typed, "We are very grateful for your sharing today. The description of cunning, baffling, and powerful of the disease of addiction definitely comes to mind." Then they followed that up and said, "The way you live your life today says very loudly that hope is real." I think that's an important message. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, cunning, baffling, and powerful. We read that in the rooms, the 12-step rooms. And that's so true. It doesn't make any sense. It's irrational. You're no longer getting what you might have once got from something, and it's running your life. And I was thinking, we had some of these questions before, and I was reminded of a quote from an author. It's a real short quote from a guy named Frederick Buechner. He said, "Here's the world. It's beautiful." Or, "Here's the world. Beautiful and terrible things will happen. Don't be afraid." And that's it. I mean, these kids or these people that you see out on the streets or in rehabs, they're beautiful people. Terrible things have happened to them in their lives. And if that experience is to you or you're going through that, to not be afraid. Fear and control are a lot of times at the root of what's going on, and to not be afraid. Again, it goes back to I believe most healing is done relationally, and through relationships, through seeing other people walk through their fear and grow up and get healed. You're able to do that. And for me, at my lowest point, Val was at home, couldn't get really up out of the bed. Anna was living with us, and I was working. And I was introduced to a practice called centering prayer. It's a form of meditation. And it's been in that practice that I've been able to let go of some pain and accept some pretty hard things. And again, I've met other people that are a little further down the road than me in that journey, and they've become friends. And I really think, that's how we get through this. Is everybody in the world is going to go through both beautiful and terrible things. No one here gets out alive. Life is short, and it's my wife is wanting to say something, I think. So.
I don't want to keep rambling. You mentioned about things being proud of, and I will say this, and I don't think it's not like I've done anything so great or anything, but I will say when I started grief counseling or during it, I remember one thing the grief counselor told me is that there's an 80% divorce rate when you lose a child. And I can honestly say that through all this horrificness, that Anna and Jim and I have a wonderful relationship. And so it kind of boggles my mind, in some respects. But it is possible, and I'm incredibly thankful for that you can go through such horrible things and that you can survive and you can learn to grow and you can learn to heal. And it is possible. People detox, I'm like, it absolutely is possible. You're alive and you're breathing and you're not 6 feet under. So it is possible. It's not easy. It's hard, but it's hard whether you're screwing up, and it's hard whether you're trying to do the right thing. So which hard do you want, So, but that is just that I am very, very thankful for that. And
amazing. I know we have a couple more questions and we've got just a couple minutes left. So Jessica, do you want to check in on the questions?
Sure. So we had someone ask, what can a parent do whose daughter is going down the same path and has now disappeared and is living on the street somewhere?
So, I mean, we spoke to the desperation and the out of control and the fear and the panic. I can remember my wife chasing after Michael, going from house to house, trying to find him. And, there is a desperation in that. I think for me, I'm a big one, like I've already said, is trying to find family, friends, people in the community, support, a system of care to help you take care of yourself. And then if you locate her and she is going down that substance abuse path, you can petition with the court, a Marchman Act or do a Baker Act, one of those two. And you may not be their best friend automatically, but again, it goes back to if someone's on this destructive path, and they very well could not be with you. You want to kind of do what you can. You can't control where she's going to end up or what's going to happen to her, but you can head in that direction. And then try to reach out, to churches, to Peace River, to Tri-County, to different agencies for support and help.
Yeah, a lot of people don't even know about marching orders. We have a lot of people that come into detox that their family, friends are concerned about their well-being, and they will go to the court, they'll get the paperwork, they fill it out, they turn it back to the judge, and the judge will sign it and have them come to detox and be court ordered to get assessed. And at least it's a step. It's not always successful sometimes, but it's a step. You're fighting, and it's a step of doing whatever you can to do. And what Jim said is absolutely true. You have to take care of yourself, because I can honestly say I let the worry and the stress of it totally wear me out mentally, emotionally, to where I would even lay on the couch and just lay there and I just would like give up at times, because I was just so overwhelmed and just didn't know what to do. I just didn't want to fight anymore. I didn't know what to do with Michael. So, and so I highly encourage that, like what Jim said, reach out and get whatever you can.
It's not gonna seem natural sometimes when you do these things, that because your instincts are not right. And when you're living and you're enabling and the diseases in your home, your instincts are all off. And so you have to learn to do what's right. And laying down some consequences and trying to get help may be the consequence that needs to happen for them. And you need the support of people around you, kind of rallying around you. I mean, in fact, the Marchman Act, you have to have a couple of 3 people that know what's going on to sign off on that. But our prayers go out to you.
Set boundaries. As painful and as hard as it is, don't enable them and allow other people into your life so they can give you their perspective also, because your perspective can get really cloudy and confused as a parent sometimes as to what's going on. Who do you believe? You want to believe them, but yeah, setting boundaries and not enabling, as hard as it is, you have to.
Thank you guys so much. I know there's a video, but I did want to add that, just thinking about what you guys have shared. And like I said before, you guys have a great story of recovery because your cells are recovering, and then you think about the tragedy that you've experienced, but you've turned that into such a positive by helping so many other people in our community and being a resource, just like the resource that you've provided here today with the information that you've given of, a message of support and access, making sure that, people are looking for access to care and not to give up, to push through. Like you said, and we mentioned earlier as well, it takes, sometimes up to 10 years for individuals to get really the treatment and the diagnosis that they need to improve their lives. And a lot of the times too, again, not to blame yourself for what your child is going through in some ways, sometimes those things that we're seeing are a symptom of their disease. And we're gonna kind of end it off with remembering Michael at the Lakeland Skate Park, like the video that you guys have shared with us. And sharing.
I wanted to advance to the slide real quick, just in case anyone drops off, just because we've mentioned resources and I've had some questions about resources. We will be sending out this recording, and I can't tell you both enough. You're just getting so many comments about thank you so much for sharing and how important it is to share. So thank you both so much. But our crisis line obviously is a resource, our access to care. And then as soon as I'll go back to the video now.
Yeah, this was on Michael's birthday, right after he passed, at the skate park across from Lakeland High School.
He would have turned 24 on February 10th, 2017. So it meant so much to me because I got in contact with all of his friends that he used to skate with. And I had a lot of fun putting it together. And he had a couple of friends made skateboard stickers. I made dog tags that had a verse from Psalms on it and Michael's name on it and the date. We had food and drinks and had a little vigil at the end and had music. And a whole ton of his friends came, and the Lakeland TV actually came and videotaped it. And it just, it meant the world to me that they did this
You go back.
for him.
Sorry. There we go.
What's up? This is Rudy from Crowder Brothers Ace Hardware, Lakeland Skaters Alliance. We're out here today, skateboard community, to remember Michael Clanton.
Oh, sorry. I was going to ask, can you all hear it? Sorry, that's what I wanted to make sure everyone could hear it.
What's up? This is Rudy from Crowder Brothers Ace Hardware, Lakeland Skaters Alliance. We're out here today, skateboard community, to remember Michael Clanton. Such a nice young man, vital part to our community here, who has left us too early. But him and his dad were very vital to us getting this wonderful skate park built here. They were at the meetings for planning and design, and we're all coming together to remember what a great person he was.
He'd be stoked, so stoked. This is what he lived for, just hanging out with his friends, having fun, being happy, you know? Keeping it simple, just like this, you know, like, just having fun, enjoying each other's company, shredding.
And Jim and Val did such an awesome job, his parents, with having a skateboard with his pictures for all his friends that skated with him to sign. And they've got t-shirts with his picture on the back and a drawing that Michael had done. I think he'd be surprised in some ways, you know, but you know, I'm sure he'd like to be here and be a part of it, and in a way he is.
It's just like a big family, really. Like, you know, like, you could be an outsider, and just if you're here having fun, trying your hardest, you know, everyone's cool to each other, you know, they just got each other's backs, you know. Just brings people together in a positive way that wouldn't happen otherwise if it weren't like such a nice public park here.
But I just want you guys to know that it means a tremendous amount to me, and it brings me a lot of comfort. The fact that you guys came, the fact that you guys have thought about him, and the fact that he was important to you, and I just wanted to tell you guys thank you.
Oh, Ileana, you're on mute.
There you go. Thank you guys again so much for sharing. I appreciate you taking the time. I know this was not easy to share in this type of format, but I think, you know, as we always say, we're trying to make it okay for individuals to open up, much like you guys have shared your story. We want to make people feel safe and challenge each other to talk about it. We want to learn about mental illness. We want to be able to talk about it and share it so that individuals can start accessing the care they need. We need to destigmatize these issues so people can get the care that they need. So thank you. If you want to say a few closing words, we'll close it off and follow up with you guys later.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for approaching us. And there is, you know, some cool things that are starting. Polk County is starting, we have an emerging, what's called the Recovery Community Organization that I'm on the founding board with a few other people. And it's just that, it's a community organization that exists to help families and people that are struggling with substance use disorders or life in general. And we're hoping to come alongside existing agencies and create new communities and groups to help people. And that's gaining some momentum. And, you know, that we do have hope, you know, that the more we talk about it, the way we talk about it, does help lessen stigma. And I think ultimately that's why we did what we did today. The minute you tell somebody you have an addiction issue or you're in recovery, it can't help but something goes off in your head when you hear that. So we're trying to do our best to say, you know, recovery is about wellness and hope and changed lives. And hopefully that's what we shared today. One last story, and I'll just end it with this. When we found out Michael had passed, everybody started showing up at our house, and a truck pulled up, and I thought it was my sponsor, and it turned out to be the first associate pastor that we had ever gone to as a adults, newly married. And he was part of the pastoral team that when we dedicated Michael in a ceremony at church, he was there. We hadn't seen him in 20 years, and both Valerie and I saw him and immediately thought, you know, he's okay, that our son's at rest and is at peace. And
He was a police chaplain.
and he is now the police chaplain, and he came in, and you know, we needed that. I don't think that was a coincidence, but I wanted to share that because there may be other people out there that you've lost a loved one, or you know, and sometimes it's complicated. It's very complicated grief because there's a lot of unfinished business. But that was just a thing that helps us truly take comfort that, you know, he is at peace and he lives on in our hearts. So thank you for letting us do this today. It meant a whole lot to us.
Thanks again, both to the both of you, and thanks to everyone that joined us today. We will follow up with an email just to give you this information and resources that Jim also shared briefly. And again, hope you guys will join us for some additional presentations throughout the month, as well as scheduling your own Make It Okay presentation. We have 3 staff members that are ambassadors for the Make It Okay campaign. So reach out to us so that we can continue to destigmatize mental illness and help each other get well. Thank you all so much for joining.